Everyone. I got my recording thing. I got to get that off the screen here. Okay. Good morning. I'm Matthew Courtney, and I am a huge nerd all about data, and I love to work with audiences on different kinds of data analysis techniques. I'm really excited to be here with you today, and I'm excited that you have gotten up this morning and decided to join us for this workshop on a cold Saturday morning. Wendy, I'm getting a notice that maybe my screen stopped sharing. Are you still seeing the slides?
Yes, we can still see. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'm not sure why I've got that notice going, but we'll just click ignore here and move on. Okay, so sorry about that. As we all know, we've gotten really good at learning how to troubleshoot and do things virtual over the last couple of years. So anyway, we'll troubleshoot as we go through today during our time together. This workshop is all about exploratory data analysis, which is a mode or a method of data analysis that probably you haven't learned before, that most of us were not taught in our teacher prep or leadership prep programs. And it's a process that I discovered through other routes and other work, and have really embraced and have worked within the state of Kentucky, but also across the nation, on embedding exploratory data analysis as a technique into school improvement processes, and really thinking about how we can use this data analysis technique to better understand our student data and to make better choices and decisions for teaching and learning in our buildings. So I'm excited to share it with you today. As you can see on the screen, I've built an online portal where all the materials for this session are housed. I'm going to take you to that here in just a minute and show you what all's in that, but there's the link, matthewbcourtney.com/KEDC, and then the password is KEDC in all caps. So lowercase in the link, uppercase in the password, and that will log you in. You'll be able to download all of the materials for today. So I'm going to start with just some normal front matter stuff that you do at any training, and we're going to begin here with some group norms. So as we're working together today, I'm going to ask you to make a couple of commitments, really 5 things I'm going to ask you to do today. The first thing, I'm going to ask you to really be thoughtful and ask questions during this workshop. This is especially important in this virtual environment because I can't see you, and I can't, even if I can see your face is that big on my screen, I can't do like a vibe check like I would if we were together in person. So if you're stuck, if I've said something that's thrown you, you're not really sure where to go next, I really need you to pop something in the chat or to unmute and interrupt me and get your question asked. If you're not asking questions, then I'm going to just work under the assumption today that we're all good and that we're all moving in the right direction. I think that's really the only way to effectively do a workshop like this in 3 hours online. I'm going to ask you today to assume positive intentions and take responsibility for impact. Again, because we're online, we lose a lot of that nonverbal communication. And so if you hear something today that comes across through the web that maybe feels a little prickly, I'm going to ask you to just assume that that person didn't mean to say something prickly. If you do say something prickly and you get a crowd response, I'm going to ask you to just take responsibility for that so that we can heal as a group from whatever has occurred and just move forward. There might be times during this workshop where you feel kind of icky, where you feel like you don't really know where to go next. You might feel frustrated with your spreadsheet software or any number of things. I call that feeling the productive disequilibrium. It's that feeling where just you feel off kilter, but you're still kind of making progress. I'm going to ask you today to really embrace the productive disequilibrium in this process today, and really just sit in that feeling, push through that feeling, and ask for help if you need it to get out of that feeling. And I promise you, I will get you to the other side of this workshop successfully. Please use electronics respectfully while we're together today. And in a virtual setting, to me, that really means that we have our microphones muted when we're not speaking, that cameras are off if we've maybe stepped away, or we need to do something distracting for a moment. We might turn our camera off so we're not distracting other learners. And then finally, I'm going to ask you to really try to be present today. I know that's especially hard when we're sitting at home doing a virtual training on a Saturday. But if you can really try to commit to this workshop and our time together today, I think that will make a richer workshop for all of us, and a better learning experience for you as well. I'll also say, please feel free at any point today. I've already said this, but unmute yourself, interrupt me, and ask your question, ask for clarifications, contribute to the conversation. You also can use the chat. So I do have a dual monitor. So if you see me like staring awkwardly off to the side, that's where I've got my chat set up over here so that you can see one screen and I can see the chat. So I will be monitoring that throughout. We'll be doing some breakout sessions, little small group chats at some points throughout the workshop. So contribute to those as well, and feel free to use your microphone during those breakouts as well. Okay, so I'm going to take you now. I want to show you the online portal, and I'm going to just drop this link here in the chat. And remember, the password is KEDC in all caps. So when you log in, you'll have, this is what you should see. You'll have access to this tab until March 1st. I can't leave them up forever. I ran out of space. So I typically give groups about 6 weeks to get in, download whatever you want, to revisit as you go through. Here are all the materials for today. So you can download those, hold on to those. The first one's a slide deck. I'm not going to use the slide deck a lot today, especially because we're virtual. I think there's better ways to use my limited screen space. But you have that, so you can download that. There's a research article that I've included as a reference called Exploratory Data Analysis in Schools, a Logic Model to Guide Implementation. That's a research article that I wrote and published on this topic. I'm not going to really use that today, but I threw it in there as a piece of reference material for you to have later. Next, you'll see a simulation data file. We will be using this. Most of our workshop today will be spent practicing data analysis techniques with this data file. So I would encourage you to go ahead and click that and start downloading that file onto your computer. Just because since you're also on a Zoom, it might take your computer a little more time to get that file downloaded. You'll see a link to some support videos, which looks like this when you click on it. So all the skills I'm going to teach you today are here. There's a video for each skill. So if you miss it while I'm talking and we're doing a private work time and you want to go back and watch a video, you can do that. If you are in school next week and you're going, oh, I really wish I remembered how to calculate the range. Here's the calculating the range video. You can watch that at any time. These videos, so you'll lose access to this portal on March 1st, but these videos also live here in the repository. That's where I put all of my resources. I'll show you the repository at the end. So even after March 1st, you'll still have access to those videos. And then finally, there's a spreadsheet function cheat sheet that looks like this. I'll be using this a lot today. So if you have a printer, you've got a dual monitor, whatever, I would encourage you to download this one. The functions on this spreadsheet are in the order I'm going to teach them today. So that's important to kind of remember. If you're trying to use this next week, they're not alphabetical order, which is more logical for long-term use, but they're in the order that we're going to do this workshop today. So we'll start here and just work our way down. So you might want to download that. And then I'm going to hit our agenda briefly. So we're going to spend the first portion of our day today just kind of getting started. I'm going to introduce you to this concept of exploratory data analysis. We're only going to go like an inch deep. So just broad theory. I just want you to be able to explain to someone else broadly what EDA is and maybe why it matters, why it's a good technique. We're going to do a little simulation setup, take some time to get our slides and our spreadsheets and everything put together. And then we're going to spend the bulk of our time today doing a social studies data simulation, really looking at some data, doing some steps, and making some decisions. And then we'll do a little wrap up. I have this going until 12. We'll probably stop a little early. I know there's some other stuff Wendy wants to talk about. And since we're online, sometimes things go a little faster because we're not like side talking and doing some of those things. I can force stop your group chats by bringing you back to the room. I don't have to, tell you to wrap up. So we'll probably end up a little shy of that 12 o'clock today. So before I dive into this first chunk and we start talking about what exploratory data analysis is, I'm going to pause and give you an opportunity to make comments in the chat, to unmute and say anything you'd like to say. I taught elementary. I am real good at wait time, so I'm just going to let a big awkward silence fall on us for a beat and give everybody a chance to unmute or type or say what you need to say before we really dive into content. All right, I'm not hearing anything. I don't see anybody typing, so I'm going to go on and again, trust that if you're not asking questions that you're good, and we're just going to push through the content today. So exploratory data analysis, what even is this thing that we're going to learn today? So EDA is a method of data analysis that probably you did not learn in school, but really probably should have. I really think it should be part of all teacher prep. And it is an open-ended and flexible way of looking at data. I like to describe it as having a conversation with the data. Normally, we approach data in a very specific way. We're using the data, we're looking for something specific. Maybe we're looking for an inequity. Maybe we're looking for how did that one kid do? Maybe we're looking for which kids did really well and which kids are really far behind. We're looking for something very specific. In EDA, we are opening our minds to the data. We are having an open-ended conversation. And because of that, it's a great entry point for deep data analysis because you really can't do it wrong. So there's three key elements of data analysis. And the first is that it's rooted in process over theory. So I'm not going to teach you, I'm going to teach you a little essential theory later in the workshop today. But for the most part, we're going to be learning step-by-step incremental processes that you can deploy in a variety of settings with a variety of data set so that you can just see what the data has to say and make sense of it. Because it's rooted in process over theory, this is a really accessible way of thinking about data analysis. And it makes it easily replicable because any process can be replicated, right, as you get better and better at it. This is also a process that deploys simple mathematical concepts. So with the exception of, I think, 3 skills I'm going to teach you today, all the rest of our skills are, I think, right now, 4th grade Kentucky Academic Standards for math. So I'm going to teach you 3 a little higher ones, but everything else is in the 4th grade standards for math. So this is very simple, accessible mathematical concepts. We are not going to get lost in the numbers today. Finally, this is a process that is flexible and iterative, which means that you can make it what you need to make it. We're going to follow a structure because I'm leading 49 people right through an EDA. But once you've done this with me, you can design an EDA process that looks like you need it to look. I never do the same exact process twice because I'm looking at the data, I'm having a conversation, and I'm reacting to the data in real time. So you really can't mess up. There's no wrong way to do this, and because there's no clear destination. EDA differs from scientific analysis, or sometimes what we call confirmation analysis, in that it's really a discovery process as opposed to an answering process. So many of us learned confirmation analysis in school. You probably had a statistics course. It was probably called something like tests and measurements or educational tests and measurements. You probably learned about a bell curve. But if you're anything like me, you had no idea what a bell curve actually was or why it mattered. Just that most of the time data falls on a bell curve, and who knows why. Actually, lots of people know why, but that's theory that we're not going to get into today because we're process oriented. You may have taken an action research course doing maybe a master's degree where you learned how to take like a pre-test and a post-test and do an analysis, right? Was the post-test better? That's confirmation analysis. This kind of analysis is all just about having a conversation. We're exploring the data, we're discovering new insights about our students, and we're just moving along from those along the way. And I'll try to give you some good examples as we go through of real world cases where I've done this with schools and they've had some interesting outcomes. I love this quote. So John Tukey is a renowned statistician. If you've had advanced statistics, you've done a doctorate degree or a really rigorous master's, you've probably heard his name because there are actually statistical tests named after him. Like he invented new math, which just kind of hurts my brain. I don't understand how somebody can invent new math, but he did. And so he has this quote about EDA. He says, exploratory data analysis is an attitude, a state of flexibility, a willingness to look for those things that we believe are not there, as well as those we believe to be there. So really, I want you in this workshop today to kind of set every other preconceived notion you have about data analysis aside and try to adopt an attitude of flexibility and a mental state of just openness today. We're going to take the data for what it is, we're going to see what it says, and we're going to apply some practitioner knowledge to make sense of it. I think that EDA is sort of the next great frontier in data analysis and school improvement. I think it is ideal for practitioners, and education as a field is really set up great to do EDA meaningfully because it focuses on skills over theory. So I've said that a bunch of times, but it really is true. We're going to learn replicable skills. We're going to apply them in multiple contexts. EDA requires practitioner knowledge to give context to the results. And this is so important. So when I work with schools and districts, a lot of times I think I got somebody. If we can all check that. There we go, thank you. When I work at schools and districts, a lot of times I will sort of pre-do an EDA, like I'll do my own analysis and then I'll kind of present it back to them and then as part of our work together. But what happens is when I do that, I'm going to just come out and I'm going to say, hey, this number looks weird. But I have no idea why that number looks weird because I don't have the local practitioner knowledge to make sense of that data. And so as a classroom level teacher or a building or district level administrator, you have so much contextual knowledge. And that knowledge is required for meaningful data analysis. So I can tell you what parts of your data look weird, but I can't tell you why. You can tell me why. So what I'm hoping to do today is to give you some skills so that you can find what parts of the data look weird a little more efficiently, and then you don't need me anymore. You can stand on your own 2 feet, you can find the weird things, and you can respond to them. I'll give you a really good example. I was working with a school district, and they were having attendance problems during COVID. And so I said, okay, let's do an EDA of your attendance data. So we pulled all the data we could find about relevant to attendance. And we started looking at it. And what we found was that their district level attendance was down, but really it was only down in 3 grade levels. So this was a small district. They had 1 elementary, 1 middle, 1 high, and it was suppressed in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And it was so suppressed that it was bringing the whole district down. And so we were like, well, what's going on there? So the principals of each of those buildings were there. And as we started talking, what we realized is that they didn't actually have an attendance problem. They had a policy implementation problem. And the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers in that building, they were interpreting the COVID attendance policy differently than all the other teachers in all the other grade levels. And so they were marking kids absent in their, because they were using like an online learning management, right? This was during virtual learning. And so they were marking kids absent when really they should have been marked as having been present that day because they had completed the work, but they completed it like kind of at a funky time. They didn't really do it during the window, and the district kind of said, well, we don't care when you complete the work as long as the work gets complete. So they were able to go back and fix that policy implementation problem, and then they fixed their attendance problem. That's so important because that district team could have spent hours and thousands of dollars on attendance intervention strategies because like they were going to buy like hotspots. They were convinced that like kids just didn't have access to the internet, but that's not what was happening at all. And they could have spent all that money trying to solve the wrong problem, all because they really asked the wrong question. So we needed that practitioner knowledge to give context to those numbers so that we could really identify the problem and fix the right problem. Okay, moving on. EDA is also a replicable process, which is, I think, great for practitioners because we don't got a lot of time. what you're going to find is that you probably work with the same data reports over and over. You are pulling reports out of Infinite Campus. Maybe you've got an Excel-based spreadsheet. Maybe you're a map district, and so you're pulling reports out of map. And those reports always look the same every time you pull them. So if you can design a report, you take the time up front, right, the first time, and you design a process to read that report and interpret that report, the next time I pull that report, I just do the same thing again. And I do the same thing the next time. And then I've got responses that look the same, so I can compare over time easier. And it saves me so much time in the long run. So in my day job, there's a report that I have to pull every month that I do analysis on. It's the same report every month. My analysis is the same. It took me an hour and a half the first time I did it. It takes me about 20 minutes now because I'm just doing the same thing every month. I take the data, I run the same calculations, I'm good. It's a replicable process. Finally, EDA can really help us to remove bias and promote equity among our learners. When I use bias here, I'm not talking so much about like intrinsic biases or some of those biases that we've been trained on. I'm really thinking about research bias, things like confirmation bias, where I've already kind of made up my mind that this is the problem. And so I look for things that prove that I'm right. Remember that when you ask a question, you get answers to the question you ask. So if I look at the data and I say, well, I want to know if my minority students are performing at the same rate, higher or lower than my non-minority students. It's a very common equity-based question. If that's what you're starting with, then that's all you're going to find. That's a yes or no question. Or I guess it's a higher, on track, or lower question. So there's three answers, right? But if you can take an EDA approach to that same question, we can start to see all kinds of nuances that we never thought to look for in the first place. And those nuances, that's where improvement really happens. That's where we can really identify meaningful and actionable steps for our students. So let me give you another example of this. So I was working with a district that they were struggling with sort of like AP classes and dual credit enrollment. They felt like it was suppressed, and they were trying to figure out, well, why aren't kids signing up for AP? And so they were convinced that that there was a race ethnicity related barrier to AP access in their district. And so I said, well, hold on, why do you think that? And they were like, well, we just think that. Well, okay, let's pull the data and let's actually look at it. So we did an EDA process, and what we actually found is that there was a race ethnicity barrier, but what was even greater was a poverty threshold barrier. So if you sorted kids by poverty first and then looked at their race, so you kind of overlap those things and you kind of put them in bands, that wealthy, in this district, wealthy white kids were enrolling at a slightly higher rate than wealthier Black kids. But then if you went to the poverty level, that's where the gap was. And so low income Black kids were enrolling at way lower rates than low income white kids. But low income white kids were also enrolling at a lower rate than high income Black kids. And so really, there was an income access problem and then a racial ethnicity access problem. And so if they had spent their time and money trying to just get more Black kids to enroll in those advanced placement courses, they wouldn't have actually solved their problem. Because really what was happening, and what we eventually found out by applying practitioner knowledge, right? We asked lots of questions, we applied practitioner knowledge. What they actually found out is that kids were scared of that test, that AP test. And so the low-income kids were just saying, look, I'm not going to pass that test. This isn't going to help me go to college. I'm not planning to go to college. I'm not taking the AP course. And so that was something that the district was then able to have a conversation around. They were able to make a really targeted action plan because they used EDA first. They didn't allow their preconceived notions to really drive that. Let me give you one more example and then I promise I'll move on. In another district, they had a grant that was funding some like attendance incentives, attendance intervention kind of stuff. They had a little bit of money left. And so they were trying to figure out what to do with this little bit of money before it expired. And so they pulled together a team that included classroom teachers and I think the guidance counselor and the principal and a number of people. And they said, okay, well, who do we need to target? And so the teachers said, we need to target our Hispanic population because our Hispanic kids aren't coming to school. And I said, how do you know that? And they said, well, because they're not in our classroom. And so I said, well, there's lots of reasons, right, why a kid might not be in your classroom. So let's do an EDA. So we pulled all the data, we did an EDA, and what they actually found is that their Hispanic population was not absent, they were migrant. So they were unenrolling for like 2 weeks, going somewhere else, and then coming back. Now, this was not a state that uses Infinite Campus. So like in Infinite Campus, if a kid unenrolls, right, you get a notification. You can see that that kid is gone. But in this state, they don't have that system. So all the teacher saw was, well, the kid never comes off my roster, probably because they weren't printing fresh rosters, right? There's a system problem there. They're just marking that kid absent 10 days in a row, and then the kid comes back. When really that kid wasn't absent, that kid was gone. And so had they targeted their Hispanic population with that little bit of attendance money, they're not solving the problem because it's not an attendance problem. They just thought it was an attendance problem because they didn't have all of the information. And so EDA helps you to get all of the information. So that's why I think it's really important. I'm excited to teach it. And I'm so passionate about it because I've seen it work. Okay, so there's really 4 steps to an EDA process. And so the first one is just accessing and tidying your data. We're going to download the data and we're going to get it ready to review. I'm not going to talk about this step today because in Kentucky, where we use Infinite Campus, your data is tidy. Anytime you pull something out of Infinite Campus, it is ready to be analyzed. That's a great strength for us. Not every state does that. So there are other states where when I do this workshop, we spend a lot of time talking about, well, just how do you clean this data up? How do you get it ready? But here, our data is ready to analyze. So check that box. Be thankful for Infinite Campus, even though it's often a thorn in our side a lot. But be thankful for it in this instance because it does produce a report that's ready to be analyzed. After we access our data, we're going to examine our categorical variables. Those are variables that are like words. So race, ethnicity, IEP status, things like that are categorical variables. So we're going to just get a feel for who our kids are. We're then going to summarize any numerical variables, days absent, days tardy, assessment results. We're going to summarize those using basic math so we can get a feel for those numbers. And then we're going to look for anomalies. We're going to look for things that stick out to us as being a little off. And we're going to analyze those anomalies and try to understand the magnitude of those anomalies. Because once I understand why a number is weird and how weird that number is, that's when I can really hone in and make a decision that changes teaching and learning. So this is the sort of framework and structure of the process I'm going to teach you today. So before we move on to look at our simulation, I'm going to pause again. I'm going to mute. I'm not seeing anything in the chat yet, but I'm going to give a good beat of wait time. If anyone would like to unmute and ask a question, put something in the chat, I'm going to give you a chance to do that now before we move on. Okay, I'm going to assume that silence is because we're all good and not because I scared everybody off, and we're just going to keep trucking along. So we're going to take the next couple of minutes and just get set up to do our simulation today. So here's what I need you to do. And please actually do this and follow along with me today so that you'll remember these skills and be more successful. 2 sets of instructions based on it, whether or not you want to use Excel or Google Sheets today. The strategies and processes I'm going to teach you are the same in both Excel and Google Sheets. The only one that'll be different is we're going to do some graphs, and graphing looks a little different, but you'll have some time to kind of play and explore. So it doesn't matter to me which one you use. I'm going to use Google Sheets because in my experience, it works better in Zoom because the math is done on Google servers, not my computer, whereas Excel is done here and it kind of can lag a little. So I'm going to model in Google Sheets today, but whichever one you want to use, do your thing. I need you to access the website use the password and download that simulation data file. If you're in Excel, download it and open it up. Save a local copy. So make sure you go in and do save as and make a copy. If you are in Google Sheets, then either one of two things. If you're on a Chromebook and you download it, it should open in Google Sheets, just like it will open in Excel on your computer. So do that, open it, save it. Or if you're like logged into Google Sheets on a PC, then you're going to want to download it, launch Google Sheets, and then do File, Open, and upload the file into Google Sheets. So I'm going to set a timer here, and I'm going to use a 3-minute timer. I want you to take 3 minutes, get yourself situated so that you can see my screen and your data set. A couple of tips on that. So if you have 2 monitors, that's great, put 1 on each monitor. Sometimes people will like open the meeting on their phone and like have it on their phone, but have their spreadsheet on their one monitor. Some people are very comfortable, especially since we've done so much on Zoom, just clicking back and forth, right? So like maybe you minimize the video and maximize and go back and forth. Take 3 minutes, get this file, get yourself situated. This is also a good time for a stretch break. And then in 3 minutes, we'll come back and get started. So I'm going to start this timer, mute myself. If you have any concerns, drop them in the chat, unmute yourself and say something, and we'll get you settled. Take 3 minutes and get yourself ready.
You got a comment in the chat there, Matthew, from Kathy.
Yeah. I'm missing Katie's. Okay. You got it, Kathy?
Yeah, so make sure you put the whole thing in. Oh, add that KDC at the end. Password KDC in all caps, and then it should let you in. Okay, look, Susie, are you getting an error when you try to open it? What's it doing?
It's just going back, like when I click on the slide deck and then I scroll down to that slide and then I click on that link.
Mm-hmm.
It is just taking me back to the password, and I put that in. And then when I do that, it just takes me back to the slide, to that original place, meeting information and all that again.
Okay, so you were able to download this? You were able to download the file?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're in Google Sheets, you'll need to go to Google Sheets.
Well, what I'm saying is it takes me right back to that page that says meeting information, January the 15th, 2021. Once I hit that Google Sheets link, put in the
You're hitting
password.
this link?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's not the Google Sheets link. I apologize.
Okay. Sorry
So
about
you'll
that.
need to go, that's okay, you'll need to go to docs.google.com. So
Okay.
just in your browser, like you would normally go open a Google Sheet. And then when you'll launch a blank one, and then you'll do File, Open, and then you'll just click where it says Upload and pop that into your Google Sheet.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And Catherine says she's getting an error message using caps. So if you do, try it without caps. Thanks, Catherine. I'm going to reset here and just give another 3 minutes. Because I don't want to leave anybody behind at this point, because you won't catch up. When you get it open, it should look like what you see on the screen. So I've transitioned now to the Google Sheet. Kara asked if we need to make a copy when we're in Google Sheets. So once you've downloaded it and opened it, it should be your own copy. And so you should be good to go. So the link that you're going to download off my portal is not a shared, it's not a shared file. It's just a plain old file. So when you open it, it should be good to go just for you. You're welcome, Kara. So about another minute and a half, and we'll check in. Hopefully everybody will have that going.
Matthew, can you go over just all the steps just from the beginning, just
Of course.
just so everyone.
Of course. So you're going to go to the portal, matthewbcourtney.com/KEDC. Use the password KEDC to get in. You're going to click and download the simulation data file. So if you're in the portal, that's right here. It's the third bullet, simulation data file. So you'll click that, it will download. I'm not going to click it because if I try to download, sometimes it'll kick me off when I'm presenting. So you'll do that. And then
do you mind if they do Excel or Google? Do you prefer Google? Okay.
Either one. You can use either one, whatever you're most comfortable in. I'm going to use Google because I think it works better when I'm presenting in a Zoom.
Okay.
But it's all the same. The processes are the same. And then you'll either open that in Excel. If you're in a Chromebook, it should open automatically in Google Sheets, or you can go to docs.google.com. I apologize. I should have put that link on this slide.
No, that's fine.
And then you'll upload it that way. So I just want to do a quick check-in. If you need more time, if you can drop that in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to go on and we'll review this file, take a look at what's in it. I don't want to leave anybody behind. I will say, when I've done this workshop online before, this is the hardest part. People always say getting it open, because if we're there in person, I can like show you where to click. But okay, Miranda's still having trouble. Let's see. Wendy, were you able to get it to open? Can you maybe troubleshoot with Miranda? It looks like she's the only one who's put in the chat.
Yes, and I was fielding a couple too that were sending me messages, so I'm just checking to make sure that they're everyone's caught up. But I sure can.
Thank you. It looks like Kristen has dropped a chat in where she's put it in for you. That's great. If you do that, make sure you make your own copies so that we're not changing each other's work. I don't know how you set the share up on that, Kristen. And that's a good point of continuous improvement for me. I should probably just go ahead and put it in a Google Doc and give you that option to do that. It says my home screen is unavailable. Oh, Kristen says it will ask you to make a copy. Good. Dean says he was able to get it to open. Huh, home screen is unavailable. I've never seen that error in a Google Doc before. So I don't know, maybe we can crowdsource in the room. I know a lot of us have had a lot of experience in Google this year. If anyone has any insight into Miranda's error, home screen is unavailable. I don't know that one. Okay, so Lynn downloaded it and then drug it into her Google Drive. So that might be another good way. Looks like Catherine may have done that too. So that may be an easier way to get it into Google Drive. Catherine says, reopen your Google Drive and open it under recent.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the fix, maybe.
Okay, great. Like I said, this is always the hardest part, getting these files, because we all have different systems and different ways of doing things. Automatically goes into Google Drive when downloaded. So if that might be the case if you're in a school that's using Google a lot, it might automatically go to your Google Drive. EDA in the classroom data set, yeah, that's what it's called. So that's what you should see when you open it. Thanks, team, for working together and trying to troubleshoot. All right, so Wendy, I know you've been back channeling. Are we getting close, you think, or what do we need to do?
I think we are. I'm looking and making sure all my messages are.
Okay, so let's do this. Let me just start talking about what's on the screen and what's in the data set. And then before I actually do anything with it, I'll pause again to see if we're all together. That way we can get on the track in the right direction. So let me just talk about this set for a minute. So what you see on the screen is the data set. First, I want to say this is a fictitious data set. I have named the teacher Miss Newman. This is Miss Newman's data for her 7th grade social studies class at Washington County Middle School. These are not real kids. This is not real data. I always like to say that because the first time I ever did this training, I didn't say that. And there was like a compliance officer in the audience and she freaked out because she thought that I had brought all this real student data and was like breaking FERPA and all of this. This is not real data, but it is designed to look like an Infinite Campus report. So if you have pulled stuff out of Infinite Campus before, the formatting of this should look familiar. You know, the order, district name, school name, first name, last name, student ID, that should look familiar to you. And this should act like any other report that you pull out of Infinite Campus. So I'm really hoping that through modeling this with you today, using this data set, that you will be able to translate this into your own data more easily. I'm going to ask you today to pretend that you are Miss Newman, to adopt these 7th graders and think about these like they are your kids. Apply your own local context and expertise to this data as we look at it today. I'm going to just go across row 1 at the top and just clarify what each thing is. So first is district name. This is Washington County. Not real, not our Washington County, but interestingly, Washington County is the most frequently used county name in the United States, with 33 states having a Washington County. So that's actually why I picked it. The school name, Washington County Middle School. First name and last name for each student and a student ID number. Their grade, so these are all 7th graders. Their course section. So Miss Newman is going to teach 7 sections of social studies. She's got a hefty course load here. Len, good point. Our first president under the Constitution. Another great reason to use the name Washington for this file. I actually do a district level training when I work with central offices that has every school is a different president. So I do the first 25 presidents in order. And Wendy's put a note in, if you're still struggling with the data, shoot her an email and she'll reach back out. Okay, so core sections, 7 sections. Gender identification, male or female. Those are the only 2 identifications we use here in Kentucky. Race, ethnicity. So we'll see what their race ethnicities are. We'll review those in a moment. Then we're going to have some yes or no indicators. Yes or no, does the student have a disability with an IEP? Yes or no, is the student eligible for program 504? So they have a 504 plan, a physical disability or health concern. Is the student economically disadvantaged? So that's what we used to call free and reduced price lunch eligible. US Ed changed maybe 2 years ago. They say economically disadvantaged now. So that's a yes or no. And a yes or no, are they an English language learner? Then we'll see this. So this data is like, think about this like it's last year's data, right? So maybe this is your new roster of your new kids for a new school year. So this is going to be cumulative data. So cumulative number of behavior referrals so far, cumulative number of in-school removals. So think about like detention, in-school suspension, those kinds of things. Cumulative number of school suspensions, cumulative number of days tardy, cumulative number of days absent. So some very important behavioral stuff, right, that we need to know about our kids. And then they've got 4 tests. They've got a benchmark fall, winter, spring, and then a summative assessment. So think about these all like last year's tests. These are, Wendy, can you reach out to Karen? It looks like she's still having a problem with the data. Thank you. So these 4 tests are just made up tests, okay? They're not modeled after anything. So we'll just take them for what they are today. They're not like designed to look like map tests or K-prep or anything like that. They're just scale scores, and we'll just analyze them for what they are. Down at the bottom, you'll see that there are 2 dashboards. One says working dashboard and one says completed dashboard. So what I've done, since we're in this virtual environment, is I've gone ahead and I've populated some tables, because what we're going to do in EDA is we're going to use these simple functions and we're just going to build some summary tables to help us understand what's in our data. So to save us time and create a little more flexibility in this virtual space, I've gone ahead and built out a bunch of tables that we're going to work on today. I've also put the instructions for completing each table. If we were in person, I would have put those on the screen, but I thought it was better for you to kind of see them like this. So you can follow along when we do some work sessions. And then if you scroll over, you'll see here's a subset of data that I've extracted and another set of tables. So this is what we're going to be working on today. And the way this is going to go is I'm going to teach a little, then I'm going to pause, I'm going to let you practice. I'm going to ask you to fill in empty squares. Okay, so I'm going to give you the skill and you're going to practice the skill and fill in the empty squares. As you're doing that, you can go to the completed dashboard and see all the answers. So this is what your dashboard should look like when you're done. So I think this is helpful to you in an online setting because you can kind of self-check along the way, make sure that you're getting the right answers. And if you're not getting the right answer, you can ask for help and we can remodel that for you. So working dashboard, that's where you're going to be practicing and applying the skills. Completed dashboard is where you're going to check your work. I'll also say about this dashboard that this is not all of the tables that you could have built. So if you're looking at it and you're going, well, I would really want to know about, I don't know, like this one looks like these subgroups by period. And maybe you really would like to know race ethnicity by period. So the skill I'm going to teach you can be applied to build that table. And if you are just lickety split and knocking these tables out and you want to build different tables, you're welcome to do that. Just in the time that we have, I wanted to give you a little more narrow range and a broader example of the kinds of tables that you might want to build during an EDA process. So with that, I'm going to switch back over here. I'm going to look to Wendy real quick and see, do we think we're ready, Wendy?
We are good to go.
All right. Let me get a drink here so I can keep talking. And so let's get started. So remember I told you when we start thinking about an EDA process, the first thing that we want to do is just kind of get a feel for our data by taking a look at some of those categorical variables, things that describe our kids. And so we've got a couple of categorical variables here. We've got their school name. We don't have to worry about that because we know all these kids are together. We've got their grade level. We don't have to worry about that because we know they're all our 7th graders. Course section in this instance is a categorical variable. Even though it's a number, it does help us describe our students. So we're going to want to maybe look at that. We're going to probably want to look at our gender identities and our race ethnicities. Those are categorical variables, as well as these eligibilities for special programs. These are all these yes or no's. They're categorical variables. They're variables that describe our kids. And so in a spreadsheet, we're going to use variations of the count function in order to create the summary tables that you see here. So you see these summary tables help us to really look at those categorical variables. So I'm going to switch here and display. This is the Essential Spreadsheet Functions PDF that's in the portal. And I'm going to just talk you through these 4 variations of the count function that we're going to use as we start this to build those tables out. So the count function, as you can probably guess, counts things in your spreadsheet. And so descriptive variables have to be counted because we can't really do math with words. And so we're going to use these 4 combinations of count functions to complete the tables and get a feel for how many students from different groups are in different locations. So the first table here, we want to know just how many kids do we have? Seems like a logical place to start, right? How many kids do we have? And so we're going to simply use the count function to do that. So to use the count function, this will count any numerical information in your spreadsheet. So we're simply going to type =count, and then in parentheses, we're going to select a range. So let's look at our data. Count only works on numerical functions. So for this one, I'm going to use student ID because that's a unique identifier, and no 2 students will have the same one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my working dashboard. I'm going to click in this cell, and I'm going to type =count. And you'll see that it pops up here. So I can click that. It's going to open my parentheses. Then I'm going to go back to my student data, select this column because that's my unique identifier, close parentheses and enter. I have 172 students in my class or on my roster. So that's a very simple one. We're going to count numbers using the count function, =count and select. In this table, I'm going, oh, I got somebody unmuted. Are you asking a question? I kind of hear a robot voice, so maybe if you've got a question, if you can unmute and put it in the chat. I'm not sure what that is. Okay, so this table, I want to count how many students I have in each race and ethnicity. And to do that, I'm going to use the COUNTIF function. So let me show you that one. No problem, Kara. I'm glad you're back with us here. So the COUNTIF function counts variables in a column, but only based on a certain criteria. So to do this one, we're going to type =COUNTIF, and then parentheses, we're going to select our column, that's our range, comma, and then we're going to put our criteria, the thing that we want to count. So let's go back and look at this. I'm going to finish this table. I want to know how many African Americans I have in my school. So to do that, I'm going to use COUNTIF. So I'm going to say =COUNTIF, and I can click right here where it pops down. And it reminds me I need a range and a criteria. So my range is where I look. So I'm going to look in student data. I'm going to look in my race ethnicity column, put a comma, and I want to count how many African Americans. So in quotations, I'm going to type African American and close parentheses and enter. I have 33 African American students out of my 172. So that's a pretty simple one too. We're going to COUNTIF, where we're going to tell it where to look and what to count. I also want to be able to complete this percentage. So to do this, we're going to do percentage with a formula, the same way that we would do anything else, where we do $33. Oh wait, no, 2 or more races. Follow the chart here. 13. So I'm going to select here, divided by the total. Enter. 2 or more races represent 7.6% of my roster. So that's another pretty simple one. The last one I'm going to teach you before I let you practice.
Sorry,
No,
can
go
you
ahead.
go back on that African American when you went back to the student data and you typed
Huh?
in after you did the equal sign count if?
Sure, you want me to do that whole function again?
Yes.
No problem. Equal sign, count if. I'm going to select where it drops down, so it's going to open my parentheses. I have to give it a range and a column. So I'm going to tell it our criteria. I'm going to tell it where to look and what to count. So we're going to look on student data, race ethnicity column, comma, and then I'm going to tell it what to count, African American. I'm going to put that in quotes so that it's exact, close parentheses, hit enter. Then you should get 33.
Matthew, would that work? I'm just throwing this out there. Would that work if is it like case sensitive? Does it have to be exactly like that for it
It's
to
going to count
populate?
exactly what you put.
Okay.
So you need to put it exactly the way you see it.
Yeah, I had missed when you said comma, put the comma.
Sure.
So it gave me an error. So I was like, what did you say to do?
No, that's okay. I'm glad that you asked. That's why this is kind of challenging in virtual, right? Because we gotta just trust that people are following along or grabbing that information. Okay, so the last one here, this one I want to count students by group. So we're going to count 2 things. And to do that, we're going to use the plural version, count ifs. So you're probably sensing a pattern here. Equal sign count ifs, the plural. So you got to make sure you hit that S. Then you're going to tell it where to look and what to count. Where to look for something else and the next thing to count. And you're going to separate each thing by a comma. So in this one, in this box, I want to count the number of students with an IEP. So remember, that's a yes or no, who are also in first period. So let's do that one. Equal sign, count ifs. Whoops, I missed a letter. COUNTIFS. Count ifs, plural, click. And then you can see it reminds you, range criteria, where to look, what to count, where to look, what to count. So I want to look on student data. You will have time to practice these. Thanks for that reminder. Student data, I'm going to look IEP. So I've selected that, comma, and I only want students with an IEP. So I'm going to set my criteria to yes, comma. Then I want to know what course section they're in, what period, right? So I want first period. So I'm going to select column G, course section, comma, 1, close parentheses. So here's what this is saying. Look in column J, right? That's my IEP. Count all the yeses. Look in column G, count all the ones. So if it is both yes and 1, it's going to count it. And I have 1 student with an IEP in first period. So here's what I want you to do. I'm going to set a timer, and I think I'm going to give you 10 minutes. I want you to complete these 3 tables. So we're gonna fill out first, third, and fifth period here. Finish these boxes. Finish these percents. Do this in the next 10 minutes. All the functions are here, and I'm going to actually leave this up on the screen. So if you need to click back and forth between your slide and to see the actual formula language, it'll be here on the screen for you. Take 10 minutes and complete those 3 boxes. And then what we'll do is we're going to do a short breakout session to kind of talk about anything in those numbers and what we take away from those numbers. So any questions for the good of the group before I mute myself and set a timer? Okay, I'll also remind you, I'm still here. I'll monitor the chat, unmute if you need help, or you can watch the video. So if you feel like you've heard me say it once and you want to hear it on your own, you can watch this count function video. It'll show you how to use all of those count functions again. All right, so I'm going to leave this up. I'm going to start a timer for 10 minutes. And I'm going to go on mute until you need me. I'll also just jump in quickly to say, I'm not going to stop for a full-on break during this workshop, so we can get it all in. So if you need a break, these work sessions are your time to get up and stretch and move around if you need to. I'm just checking in to let you know 5 minutes have elapsed. We have about 5 minutes left in this work session.
Hi, Matthew. It's Lynn Lockard. Can you tell me what 3 boxes? Is it we're only doing 3 boxes just in the race ethnicity? Is that our assignment?
That's right. So what you'll complete the first 3 tables. So there's 3 boxes for count in race ethnicity, and there should be 2 boxes under percent. And then down on the 3rd table, you'll do 1st period, 3rd period, and 5th period.
Okay. Well, I'm going to not be done by your 2-minute time.
That's okay. We'll check in. And if we need to extend that, we can.
Thank you.
Yes.
I had to watch your video.
That's okay. That's why they're there. Since I can't circulate right the way I would normally do, that's why they're there for you all. So whatever you need. I don't want anyone to feel stressed about this today. So we'll go at the pace we need to go. Okay, so that's been 10 minutes. So let's, if you want to use maybe the reactions feature and let's say, how about give me a thumbs up if you're ready to move on. And then if I don't see thumbs up, then we'll give more time. How's that? Okay, I don't see any thumbs up. So let's do 5 more minutes and then I'll check in again. Okay, I got a couple of thumbs up. Okay, let's do 5 more minutes and then we'll check in. Danielle's asked if we have to complete the full table or just until you're comfortable. So you can stop if you feel like you've got that that feature down, because you can use the completed dashboard to see all of the numbers. So if you feel like you've got it and you're ready to move on and our 5-minute timer is up, feel free to just look at the completed dashboard to see all of the numbers. So that's up to you. I want you to have enough time that you can practice and internalize if that's what you need to do. Okay, Brittany's asked if I can quickly show how to do percentages again. So to do a percentage, it's the same way you would do it on a calculator. So we're going to take the number divided by the total. So in the spreadsheet, you do that by typing equal sign, selecting the first number, slash, selecting the total, enter. So it's exactly the same as in a calculator. You just start it with an equal sign.
See what Anna wants to do when it snows is stay in bed. And then we don't see her. Like she just disappears. Well, Angie, I got.
All right, so that was another 5 minutes.
So the last snow we've had.
So let's do this. I still see that I've got some people working. So let me go ahead and let's skip our group chat, this first group chat section. Let me teach the next section, and then we'll give another big work period, and then we'll do a group chat after that. That way we can kind of keep moving in the same direction here. And this section should be easier because you're gonna start to see there's a lot of commonalities to these functions and how they operate. So if we move down here, we're in row 23, the new table here, average number of behavior incidents. So we're gonna move on from analyzing our descriptive variables of our kids and move on to taking a look at our numerical variables. And we want to summarize our numerical variables using descriptive statistics like the average. So teachers generally know how to use the average, right? Because we do that, it's how we run our grade books normally. And it's based on percentages and averages. And so theoretically, this should feel pretty comfortable to you. We're going to use 3 versions of the average function: average, average if, and average ifs. So some commonality, right? We just did count, count if, count ifs. So now we're going to do average, average if, average ifs. So I'm going to just show each of those briefly. So we're going to start with average number of behavior referrals. I'm going to use the average function to do that. And so it works just like that count function. I'm going to type = average. I can select it here. And then I just have to tell it what numbers to average. So I'm going to go back over here. I want to average behavior referrals. So I'm going to click student data, find my behavior referrals. They're over here somewhere. Here we go, behavior referrals, close parentheses, enter. So 1.85 is the average number of behavior referrals per kid. I can do the same thing if I want to know what is the average number of behavior referrals by a subgroup. So I'm going to use average if. So we're going to say only average these numbers if this other criteria applies. So I'm going to apply the Hispanic criteria. So I'm going to follow the same function, = average if. I can select here. And you can see where I'm going to start with the criteria, where to look, what to look for, and then what numbers to average. So I'm going to go over here. We want to average our Hispanic students. So where to look, we're going to look in I. What to look for, Hispanic. And then what do we want to average? Behavior referrals. Where to look, what to look for, what to average. 0.80 is the average number of behavior referrals for Hispanic students. Finally, we can do average ifs the same way. But average ifs is a little tricky because it flips. We're going to do our average range first. So I'm going to do = average ifs, plural. And remember, when I select it, it'll tell me what to do. So average range, what numbers, then what do I want to look for? Or where do I look? What do I count? Where do I look? What do I count? So I'm going to go over here, student data. I'm going to start with behavior referrals because that's what I want to average. And then I don't remember what's on the rest of my table. First period, African American. So I'm going to go to course section, where to look. We're going to look for 1. Race, ethnicity, where to look. We're going to look for African American, close parentheses, enter. So the average number, that should have been absences. I'm going to redo that. Average ifs, open parentheses, absences, click the wrong thing, absences. That's what we're going to average. What do we want to average? We want to average first period. So where to look for first period. African Americans, where to look. African American, close parentheses. So 1, the average number of absences for African Americans in first period is 1. So I'm going to set the timer again for 10 minutes. I want you to work on these tables. Again, if in the next 10 minutes, you're not able to complete all of the table, that's okay. Try to practice each of the 3 versions, average, average ifs, and average ifs. See that you can get all of those to work. And then when we go after this work period, we'll go to a group session, a chat session, and you can use the completed dashboard if you are not able to fill out all of the numbers in the next 10 minutes. So practice those 3 functions. I'm going to put on the screen again. Well, it won't let me show all of them, it looks like. I'm going to just show these 2, average if and average ifs, because these are the trickier ones. And I want you to work on that. Chat with me in the chat, or unmute if you need help, and we'll regroup in 10 minutes. And I do see I've had a couple of private messages in the chat, so I'm going to respond to those now. So just bear with me.
Matthew, just a question for me and others. Sure. As I use my iPhone calculator to do this configuring here, are these functions that you're talking about here the most common functions that folks would use when they're looking at data like this?
Yes, 100%. When I do an exploratory data analysis, these are the exact functions that I use, and I'm teaching them to you in the exact order that I do them.
Right. That's what I think it was. That's good for me to know, because I'm not a spreadsheet. Of course, looking at data, we all do that, but using spreadsheets, I'm by far the furthest from being an expert. But just knowing that these are the most common used formulas that we would, it eases my mind, and it should ease everyone else. And again, like Wendy said, if you've got an iPhone calculator, you should be good to go anyway. So, but everybody, this is, I'm just trying to be lighthearted, but I appreciate that. So thanks.
Sure. All right, I'm going to start this timer, and then I'm going to start answering private messages in the chat. So if you're waiting on me, just a couple more minutes. All right, I'm going to bring us back together. I do want to say one thing that I neglected to say before I sent you off into a work session, and I apologize for that. So see here where I've got this on the screen, this looks like $div/0 exclamation point. So when you're using the average function, this code here means that it can't return a result because there are no Asian students in first period. That is different than 0. So here where I have Hispanic 0, the average number of days absent in first period for Hispanic students is 0. So that's the value. Whereas this one where it says div/0 means that there aren't any students, it can't complete the function. So I should have said that at the beginning and I got distracted and forgot. So I apologize if that caused anyone confusion. So here's what I'd like us to do now. I know that several of us are still working on populating some of these charts, but in the interest of time, I want you to either use your own work or look at the completed dashboard where all of the figures are there for you. And we're going to, I want to ask Wendy to send us out into some breakout rooms. Let's do 5 minutes for that, Wendy. And in your breakout room, here's what I want you to think about. First, remember, we're going to embrace that productive disequilibrium. So if you're feeling frustrated about the functions, hold that, push through that. Try not to allow your 5 minutes to be about frustrations over the functions, okay? So really try to use the data you see on the screen. And what I want you to do is have a conversation with your colleagues about that data. Pretend these are your kids. And for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tables, maybe 7 tables that we've completed so far, I want you to discuss any takeaways. What sticks out to you about that data? What do you still want to know? Are there pieces of information that we haven't discovered yet that interest you? How might any of this information change the way that you think about your students or about the work that you're going to give? So really hold yourselves accountable in this group. Push through any frustration you might be feeling right now. Focus on the numbers, adopt these kids, and spend 5 minutes talking about any kind of takeaways. Apply your practitioner knowledge. What do these numbers mean to you? Does anything stick out to you? And then we'll come back together in 5 minutes and kind of debrief. So Wendy, I think we're ready when you are.
I'm just looking to see where I need to put people that have not joined yet.
Hey, Wendy, I've not been invited to a group.
You've not. All right, I will put you in a group there, my dear.
Thank you. It kicked me right on out.
It did.
I apparently, what in the world? I'm on an iPad. I'm struggling.
Well, I will put you in a
There it
group too. Laura, do you remember what group you were in?
4 or 5 possibly.
Okay.
I went to access, like allow access to microphone and it
It
Down
just
it.
kicked you out. All right, I will put you back there.
Thank you.
This is Miranda. I'm not in a group either, and I don't know what group number it is.
All right, I will put you with one, my dear.
Thank you.
I'm the same way.
All right, I'll take care of you, Peyton.
Laura Cundiff.
I wonder, see, sometimes I don't know why it's so stubborn.
I
It's
got
like-
kicked off of Zoom a minute ago, so I was assuming.
Oh, I wonder if that's, yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna see what happened.
no problem. We can take care of you real quick. I just don't want some of my groups to be so large that, let's see. There we go. I'm gonna put, some of these people still are not. All right. That'll be good.
Wendy and Jim, do you feel good about how this is going so far?
Yeah, I think they're getting lots out of it. I know I'm taking notes because I'm like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. I sent Dr. Evans a message once and I said, are you watching this?
I'm watching. Yes, I'm paying attention. So yeah, yeah, we try to stay lighthearted about this iPhone calculator. It's been a long running joke with me, again, because of budgeting and things like that with grants. As soon as we start talking numbers, I immediately go to the iPhone calculator. So it's pretty good though. So, but no, I think it's going very well.
Yeah.
And the reason I brought up the comments about the formula is I think that for me, that's a piece that is a little uncomfortable because I'm not familiar with that as working with. So I think once people that becomes a norm, but then they have a reference tool here. So that way, so I think it is.
Okay. I haven't gotten too many private chats that I think are frustrated, so that's good. I think.
Yeah,
I think
no, and once we got there, either the Excel or the Google going, I think everything's been smooth sailing.
yeah, I think that's the hardest part.
Yeah, and I think it's just one for me, even I was like, does it have to be Google or can it be Excel? And I think
Yeah,
that
okay.
comfort level.
Sure. Yeah,
I
that's some good suggestions for the next time I do this online. I can tweak some of that a little bit.
No, I think it was great. Yeah, so far so good. And I think I know one, just me thinking
Yeah.
is, I really want them to know and to think about, how they're going to, because right now, I'm processing, how would I use, I want them to think about, how am I going to use this in my classroom? How am I going to really translate all of this, because they may be thinking, this is great. This is good to know, like the broad, like if I'm looking at school population, all of that, but
Mhm.
Driving that home to if I'm in a 5th grade classroom and I'm looking at, XYZ.
Sure.
So I really want them to think about, if I'm a kindergarten teacher, how does this work for me? Or if I'm a 5th grade teacher, how does this work for me?
Yeah.
So I really want them to have that takeaway of, practicality of
Sure.
how am I going to take this and run with it on Monday or Tuesday?
Yeah. I'm hoping some of that will come out in these small conversations that are happening right now. And then what I'm going to do after this to save time, I'm going to go ahead and move to the other half of the dashboard. And that's all about assessment analysis. So we're going to actually look at an assessment and do some comparisons. And so I think they'll make stronger connections there.
Right.
And then hopefully we'll be able to circle all that back. The challenge of this workshop is sometimes we get so bogged down in the nitty gritty little skill that we forget that this is actually a thing we can apply and use, which is why I asked them to try to ignore frustration over the functions if they're still struggling with that and really focus on the numbers for this little chat. So hopefully, as we transition to looking at just the testing data, that maybe that will give us a little more opportunity to dig deeper. You kind of have to do this stuff first, right? Before you can do the testing. So it's cumulative.
I just broadcast a message 1 more minute.
Perfect, thank you.
And I've got room 3 asking for help. So I'm going to go in there and see what's going on.
Okay.
Progress.
In the breakout rooms now. I will close all the rooms. Group 3, one person was in there on phone and one person wasn't able to talk. So I've just spitballed ideas with her real quick. Welcome back.
It always makes me nervous watching people trickle back in from breakout rooms. I was going, who left me? Who's not going to come back? I think we got everybody back, looks like. All right, well, thanks everybody for indulging us in a brief chat. Before we pick back up and continue to learn some new skills, I would love to hear if any of our groups had any brainstorms or takeaways, thinking about these students as your adopted students, and this initial data analysis just about who they are, right? Because we haven't actually gotten into any real meaty data on them yet. Any takeaways, any ahas or connections that might be good for the whole group to share? Please feel free to unmute and share your wisdom with the team.
Oh, sorry. Oh, okay, I'll go. In our group, we talked about, we noticed that the average number of behavioral of those with 2 or more races was higher compared to the other categories and groups there. And also we made that connection that of absent days, that 2 or more races, they had a higher absent percentage compared to the other ones. So maybe there was a link there, that because they were having a higher absence, then their behavior was causing problems because they were farther behind because of their absence. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That was a great connection to make. And thinking about if you were doing this in a real world context, you might even be able to take that and dig a little deeper, make some different tables, looking at maybe tardiness, looking at maybe outcomes. Are 2 or more students with 2 or more races being suspended more frequently? Are there outcomes maybe more or less severe than other groups of students? Are they more transient? So there's other things we can kind of dig deeper into that, having more time and a little more context. Any other connections that anyone made that you'd like to share with the group?
We noticed that third period, sixth period, there was, that's where the 2 or more races were mostly at, and the Hispanic students. The Hispanic students were absent more often, but the 2 or more races had more incidences in third and sixth period to have behavioral issues. And we also noticed that third and sixth period also had the heavier of the, my brain just left me, economically disadvantaged students in it too.
Good, excellent connections. So I'm looking at third period Hispanic students with an average absentee rate of 12 days. Dang, that's a lot. That's a lot. And so if I'm teaching this class, that to me is an anomalous figure. That's a number that's way higher than all the rest. And so I can really hone in on that and think, man, what can I do? How can I build relationships with the kids in that class? How can I tailor my class? Or maybe do I need to think about how I remediate? How do I give homework to kids who've missed? How do I provide support to kids who are missing? Because I can see very clearly that in third period, I'm going to have a consistent concern there. Any others? Can I get one more?
With that, we also noticed that the 2 or more races was also in that class, that it might be that there might have been some bullying going on or something. And that was the reason the Hispanics were being absent, and that the African-American kids were getting in more trouble. Maybe there was some kind of, rivalry there or something, depending on what the context of the classroom is. And that's where you'd have to know the context of the classroom to know what was going on there.
Yeah, that's another great connection. And I'm glad you're able to make the connection that local context really matters, right? We can use what knowledge we have to hypothesize, but if you were really the teacher of those kids and you were looking at those numbers, I bet that teacher can tell me exactly what's happening in that classroom and exactly why those numbers are a little skewed. So thank you for that. I hope that you're starting to see now, as we are about halfway through this process, how by just taking broad strokes and looking at the data and kind of thinking about data like a sponge, right? We're just kind of wringing it out and asking questions and building tables to see what they say. Hopefully you're starting to see that these anomalous numbers really pop out pretty easily and you can spot them really fast. And then, as we've just seen, you can make some important connections. So I'm going to reshare my screen. Actually, this is going to take me just a second because I got booted out for a moment, so I have to redo all my settings. So give me just 1 second here. Almost there, hold on. Okay. So we're going to continue with our project. And what I'm going to do, for the sake of time, we've only got about an hour left. And I'd really like to finish in about 45 minutes. That way you've got some time to do some wrap up stuff. So I'm going to skip. First, I should say, can someone confirm you're seeing the Google Sheet now? Okay, I got a thumbs up from Jim. So I'm going to skip these bottom two because we're going to actually repeat those with another activity here in a second. And I'm going to scroll across to the rest of my dashboard. Because what I'd like to do now is start kind of thinking about some assessment data. So we see on our main spreadsheet that we have summative assessment data. We have actually 4, right? 3 benchmarks and a summative assessment. So what I've done for you here on the dashboard, I need to switch to my working dashboard, sorry. What I've done for you here is I've gone ahead and pulled out a subset of that summative assessment data. And I've divided it out by the 5 race ethnicity groups in this data set. So this whole data set in columns N through R, this is all the summative assessment data. And we see it now divided by group. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do a deeper dive into this data now. And this is really kind of where, to me, where the rubber meets the road, where we can really start to analyze that data and make some meaningful instructional decisions. And so to do that, we're going to build out these tables. And these are all, whoops. These are all tables designed to help us take a deeper look at what's going on. So the first thing that we want to do with this data is we want to summarize it. And we summarize numerical data using descriptive statistics. So remember how I said that most of this is going to be 4th grade Kentucky academic standards. And so that's what these all are. All of this is simple, easy math, the mean, median, and mode, and the range. So what we want to do is calculate each of those easy summary statistics for each of the columns in our data so that we can summarize and get a feel for how our kids are performing. So I'm going to start back over here on this formulas page. We're going to use these very simple formulas. So equal sign median, equal sign mode. We're going to use equal sign average to find the mean, because if you remember back, mean and average are the same. There's the same thing. They're synonyms. So these are very simple formulas. Equal sign median, select a column. Equal sign mode, select a column. Same thing for our range. Equal sign min for the lowest, equal sign max for the highest. And we're going to just populate this table. So I'm going to do the African American column. I'm going to model all the way down. And then we'll pause and let you work on the other 2 here. So here's how I'm going to do this. The mean is the average. So I'm going to use a formula we already learned. Equal sign average, open parentheses. I'm going to come over here to my data. Remember, I'm using just this subset of data, right? And I'm going to select my African American data. Close parentheses, enter. I'm going to reject this autofill because that's going to mess me up. So my average performance on the test is 226.73. Median, you'll remember, is the middle score in a distribution. So if you put them all in order, the median is the one in the middle. So I'm going to type equal, whoops, in the wrong box. I'm going to type equal sign median, very simple formula. And I'm going to highlight all my numbers for African American. Close parentheses, enter. The middle score, the median score is 226 or 222. Mode, same thing. Equal sign mode. Remember that mode is the score that's most common. So I'm going to type equal sign mode and select my data. Min, the minimum number, equal sign min. Select my data. Close parentheses, enter. And max, equal sign max, the highest number, select my data. So I did those quickly, but hopefully you can see those are very straightforward and very simple functions to apply. And you've got all the codes here. I'm going to do these last 3 boxes, and then I'm going to give you a work break. So range, the range tells us how spread out our scores are. And the range is simply the highest score minus the lowest score. So I'm going to use a plain old formula for that. I'm going to say equal sign, click my highest score minus my lowest score, enter. So 107, that's the distance between these numbers. Standard deviation also is a measure that tells us how spread out our scores are. And I'm going to use the standard deviation function. So I'm going to type equal sign STDEV, standard deviation. You see it comes right up. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go over here and highlight. And then finally, I'm going to do my count. The same way that we've already learned how to do it. Come over here and highlight. So these are very simple functions that you're just typing in the name of the function and highlighting the whole thing. I'm going to ask you to, in the next work break, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I want you to do Hispanic and white and fill this table out. Once the whole table is filled out, then I'm going to pause and talk to you a little bit about how to interpret these different numbers and why we're using all of these numbers. Okay, but I want you to have a chance to fill it out. And I think what I'm going to do to make this even easier for you to see, over here, I'm going to put the formulas without the equal sign. So you'll have to add the equal sign to each of these, but this way you'll be able to see exactly what you're using. This is a formula. Okay, so you're going to do each of these functions to complete the African American, Hispanic, and white columns. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll come back together and see where everybody is. I'll continue monitoring the chat. So if you have questions or need help, you can reach me there. You also have access to the videos. So all of these videos, median, average, mode, min and max, range, standard deviation, there's videos for all of those to supplement the lack of circulation. You also have them spelled out for you here in this document. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes, try to complete this table, and we'll check in 5 minutes.
Matthew, it's Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
Where is the mean function? Because like when I type equals mean, I'm still in the first box. It doesn't show up when I type in mean. Nothing's there.
That's okay. It's not mean, it's average.
Oh, what?
Yeah,
That's not in
remember
here.
that mean and average are synonyms.
Oh, all right. So just average. Because
Yeah,
that is on the cheat sheet thing, there isn't a thing for mean. So I was like, what?
Oh, I'm sorry. I might have not explained that well. So yeah, it's a separate, you're just going to use average exactly the way that you learned it for the last set of tables.
All right. I got the median one to work. I still can't make the what if thing on the last little thing work where you're putting in all those. I don't know. I went back, I watched the video numerous times and put my, I don't know what I'm doing on the that.
Okay, well, when we wrap up, if you want to just hang on and then you can screen share and we can look at it.
That would be awesome, because honestly, I need this because I'm in a college level class and it's a data class and I'm doing a big project and this would help me so much. So
sure, yeah, I'm happy to hang on and we can look at it after.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. While you're working, I'm going to step away just for a second and refill my water. I'll be back. Okay, I'm just going to do a quick check. If you are ready to move on, if you can indicate that in the chat somehow, and we'll just kind of see where everybody is. Okay, looks like I've got quite a few. So if you're still working, feel free to keep doing that. What I want to do now is talk a little bit about how we might interpret some of this data. Because it's one thing to be able to calculate the numbers, but if you can't make any sense of them, then it doesn't really help you, right? So let's think about this. This range of figures that we have just calculated are what we call descriptive statistics. I think I've got somebody who's unmute, so if we can all check our mic status. Okay, so these are what we call descriptive statistics. They're simple statistics that help us understand kind of a whole distribution of scores and be able to compare them. So what we can do with this table is compare the performance of each of our race ethnicity groups very easily in one spot. So, pardon me. So the mean is the average. So that's a figure that we're used to. Average is what we call a measure of central tendency. It helps us kind of know what's happening in the middle-ish range of our scores. And we can go across here and we can see that our Asian students performed a little higher than our African American students. They performed higher than our Hispanic students, our 2 or more races, and a smidge higher than our white students. If I were going to put these in order, looks like Asians are highest, followed by our white students, followed by Hispanic, 2 or more races, and African American. So that's helpful information for us to know. And generally in education, that's where we stop. We are really good at using the average in our field. If you've played around or clicked on my website since you've had access to this, you may have seen that my blog here in the middle, I call it #BeyondTheMean, because part of my personal and professional mission is to get educators to look beyond the average and start really thinking about a full range of scores and what that tells us. So let's look at what some of these other ones tell us here. Let's start with median. We'll just go in order. So the median is the exact middle in a distribution of scores. And so we can kind of look across here and see the exact middle score for each of our kids, each of our groups. And we see that for 2 or more races and for white students, that exact middle is the same. That's really interesting to me when we look here and we see that they're not the same average, that our white students outperformed our 2 or more race students on the average, but their middle is the same. What that suggests to me is that my white students are probably a little further apart. Our white students didn't all score together as a group, maybe. I'm scrolling through here and looking at modes. Mode is the number that shows up most often. So mode can be a helpful number. I usually just find it to be an interesting number. But looking through here to see kind of what's happening, Hispanic students didn't have a mode. Every Hispanic scored something different. That's just sort of interesting tidbit. The min, max, and range. So really want to see the bottom score and the highest score for each group. So if we go through here, 167, 274, they're 107 apart. Asians, 102 apart. Hispanic, 101 apart. 2 or more races, 99 apart. White students, 155 apart. So remember, I made this observation earlier about how it's interesting these have the same median, but the means are farther apart. This range kind of helps to verify and explain that a little bit. 2 or more races, those students were forming a little more tightly as a group, while my white students, their scores are a little more spread out. Standard deviation is another measure that helps us to see how spread out our scores are. And so what we would generally want to see in education are low standard deviations. That means that your kids are performing together and moving as a group. So we see here that our African American students, our Asian students are moving a little more tightly. Our white students are a little more spread out. And then for just as a reference, we have the counts here. So remember, we already did those counts, right? We did that right off the bat, but we can see them again here, which helps us again to kind of just conceptualize these numbers. Remember, throughout all EDA, what we're looking at is numbers that stick out to us, things that are just kind of interesting. And so like this median here is kind of interesting to me, especially when you look down here at these measures of dispersion. These minimum scores are interesting to me. So my lowest scorer in my class was African American. Who was my highest scorer? The highest scorer in my class looks like it was a white student. So that's interesting, right? Interesting pieces of information that if these were my real kids, these were my real students, my real classes, that I could dig deeper to help me understand what's really going on with these different anomalies. So we're going to come back. I'm going to give you an opportunity to look at those again. But I want to move on and I want to look at the next section here, which is a correlation. So correlations help us to see the strength of a relationship between 2 variables. And we do that with the Pearson function. So a correlation, it's a simple statistic. It exists on a range of +1 to -1, 0 meaning there's no correlation between the two. And we're just going to kind of take a look to see, we're going to take a look to see how strongly related the scores are. In this context, with an assessment score, this is helping us to really quantify how far apart our students are really scoring. And so to do this, this is very simple. we're going to use the Pearson function. So we're going to type equal sign Pearson. And then we have to give it two things, two pieces of information. In this case, I'm going to give it my Asian scores, comma, my African-American scores, because I want to see the strength of relationships. So I'm just going to come over here, Asian scores, comma, African-American scores, close parentheses, enter. Why did that not work? Mismatch argument. Try again. This isn't letting me match their count. Okay, I'm not really sure what to say about that one because this worked because I've completed it here. So let me think what I want to do. Okay, here's what I want to do. I'm going to troubleshoot that during your next work session and try to figure out why it's not working on my screen today, but it did work on my screen when I built this. So that's super weird. Welcome to Google Data, right? And the thrills of online virtual training on a Saturday morning. So, okay, pause on Pearson. I'm going to troubleshoot that during your next work session. And I'm going to jump down. Virtual learning is always fun. I know that this group knows that better than probably any group I have trained all year. So thank you for your grace and flexibility that you'll grant me as we try to figure out why, for some reason, it's just not working today. Anyway, I'm going to jump down. I'm going to skip this one and come down here because I'm looking at time too. I want to make sure we get through this. I want to talk to you about effect size. Because this is another really effective way to look at student data, and is a statistic that I think educators really benefit from learning. So you've probably heard about effect size because I'm quite sure that you've been trained on the work of John Hattie at some point in your career. If you're familiar with that work, what John Hattie did is he took all of these awesome studies about different kinds of teaching strategies, and he mushed them together in using a statistic called effect size to try to show how big of a difference those activities really are. And so it's a fascinating statistic and one that we use a lot in education. And it's a great way to quantify in a really meaningful way how far apart two groups of students performed on an assessment. And so one of the things that you can do in an EDA process is to build an effect size matrix like this one, where we're going to statistically compare how far apart is the performance of, in this case here, Asian students and African-American students, or down here, Asian students and white students. The formula for effect size is really easy. We're going to subtract the average from one of them, from the average of the second, so mean 1 minus mean 2, okay, divided by the pooled standard deviation. So I've already calculated pooled standard deviations here for you. So all we're going to do to calculate this effect size is do an equal sign, and in parentheses, so this one's Hispanic and African American. So I'm going to go up to the top, and I'm going to do, hold on, I didn't fill all this out. I gotta switch dashboards. That correlation just really threw me, guys. Okay, copy this over here. I'm just gonna delete this one. Okay, so mean 1 minus mean 2 divided by pooled standard deviation. So I wanna know the effect size between African-American students and Hispanic students. So I'm gonna do equal sign, open parentheses, Hispanic average minus, I already done forgot what the other one is, African-American, close parentheses, divided by the pooled standard deviation for African-Americans and Hispanic students, which I've already calculated for you here. And in this case, it's 0.34. So, so what we're doing here is we're really trying to get a figure that helps us understand how spread out, how far apart these groups really performed. Standard deviations are generally, standard deviations, effect sizes are generally considered to be low if they're around 0.2. That's a 6. 0.2. Medium if they're around 0.5 or 0.6. And high when they're around 0.8 or 1. This is a good way for us to really concretely describe how far apart our student groups are performing. This is one of those things I like to teach to teachers because it's like super impressive. Like you're going to a board meeting and you want to be able to explain to your board like really how far apart your scores are, or performance between buildings if you're a district person. This is like a real snazzy professional way to be able to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you about 5 minutes again, and I'm going to, looks like I'm going to be talking to Lynn because she's messaging me, and shout out to Lynn. She figured out why that correlation formula isn't working. So super excited about that because I'm real frustrated that it didn't want to work for me today. Take 5 minutes, try to fill out this effect size matrix, and then we'll come back and we'll look at correlation, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, so here's the formula. Mean 1 minus mean 2 divided by standard deviation pooled. You're going to pull the standard deviation pooled from this, okay, and try to fill out the rest of the chart, and then we'll come back and we'll regroup. So I'm going to mute. I'm also going to stop sharing so I can play with that formula, but I'm still here. So message me, unmute, whatever you need to do, and I'll see you in 5 minutes. Okay, being mindful of the time, I'm gonna just pull your attention back for just a minute and show you the corrected Pearson function. Because it's so easy, you're just gonna highlight two things and hit enter. That way you can work on correlation matrix at the same time. Shout out to Lynn who figured out that I was just highlighting the wrong thing. So when I was a music teacher and a musician and a theater person, we always used to talk about the pressures of live action, right? And how you just sort of spiral when things go wrong in live and in person. But shout out to Lynn, she saved the day. So it's same exactly as I showed you, Pearson, but instead of highlighting just the kids, highlight the whole column. Okay, so type Pearson, in parentheses, column 1, comma, column 2, enter, and you'll get your answer there right at point 4. So I'm just going to type this right here. And so during the rest of this work break, if you will spend the next 5, maybe we'll do 8 minutes, do a couple of correlations, do a couple of effect sizes, and then we'll pull back together and we'll look at the whole thing. We'll do another little chat before we wrap up. So try a handful of correlations, a handful of effect sizes as we try to wrap up in the next 15 or 20 minutes here. I'm just doing a quick check-in. If you can indicate in the chat for me, if you've successfully been able to do a couple of Pearsons and a couple of effect sizes. And you may have not finished the whole table, but that's okay. If you've done just a couple and you feel like you know how to replicate that, if you'll indicate for me. I see a couple trickling in. I'll give just another second here. All right. I think we're looking good. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to just talk through the t-test function real fast. And then I think Wendy at that point will do another breakout. So if you want to start setting those up. So the t-test function is the last test that I haven't gotten to teach you yet today, but another test that's really effective, especially when looking at data, assessment data, or any time when we want to compare two groups, okay? Basically, what a t-test does is it takes the average of two groups and it tells you if the difference between the two groups is statistically significant or not. And it is accepted for a lot of convoluted theory reasons that I'm not going to tell you, because remember, we're stripping theory out. It is accepted that the results of a t-test are statistically significant if it is less than 0.05. Okay, so that's the only number you have to remember. When you perform a t-test, you're going to get an output. And if it's lower than 0.05, then you can say that the difference between the two groups is statistically significant. So let's look at the chart here. African American and Asian, 0.07, not statistically significant. Hispanic African American, 0.18, not statistically significant. 2 or more African American, 0.32, not statistically significant. White African American, 0.01. That is a statistically significant difference. So what we can say is that in this class, on this assessment, our African American students and our white students scored really far apart. We know that by just looking at their averages. We can see that their averages are statistically significant. And then we can look down here and see they've got a pretty far effect size, they're pretty far apart. So that's a takeaway that we can get from this data. I'm not going to give you practice time. I'm not going to model that, but there is a video on t-test, the t.test function down here at the very bottom, where I go through each of the elements of the t.test function and how to do that. In this effect size video also, I talk about pooled standard deviation and how to do that calculation as well. I don't have enough time to get into those today, but you have those videos and you will have access to them forever, so you can go back and revisit the steps for those. What I'd like for you to do, I'm going to have Wendy put us in groups for 5 minutes. I would like for you to use either your dashboard or the completed dashboard. Have a conversation. Think about, like, maybe we're in a PLC meeting and we've just given this summative assessment. We've disaggregated our data out by group. We have all of these numbers. What do we know about our kids and about this assessment based on all of these numbers that we've just calculated? And let's also think about what might we do next? What are our next steps now that we've seen this data and really have analyzed our assessment data? So Wendy, if you can send us to groups for 5 minutes, and that's your task. Just have a conversation like you would in your PLC group.
Just let me know, anyone, if you do not get an invitation to a breakout room. Looks like most everybody is in an active. Rebecca, you need a room? Okay. Let's see. I don't know why some of these, they're assigned a room on my end. I just don't know why they're not.
It's
It's
just
kind of
the
weird.
virtual.
Technology is a beast sometimes.
Yeah, like that formula not working. What the heck?
I know.
It's so embarrassing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So Wendy, after this one, I'll do a little share out like we did the last time. And then I want to just review a couple of resources that'll be available to them long-term, and then I'll wrap up.
Perfect.
So does that work okay?
I think that sounds great.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Do we make a good connection?
Oh yeah, I think it's been great. I've been getting some private messages and they're like, this is going to be great for my special education. Yeah, I mean, so it's good. Yeah, really good feedback.
Great.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's awkward training all those little black squares.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Are you following me? Are you not? Do you hate me?
No, I think
That's
it's good. Yeah, I think it's been really. Let's put. Miss Sabrina, do you need a room?
It looks like she's connecting. There's something I see on my end. Her profile is spinning down there. I don't know if you can see that or not, but
yeah.
Wendy, I was in a room. I keep getting kicked out. I think my internet's having
issues. Okay. Jess, do you remember what room you were in?
9, I think.
9. Okay. I'll try to put you back there, my dear.
Thank you.
Sorry. I'm sorry that you're having. That's one of the things about, some of my teachers are, their internet connections at home are not the best. So we have found that with their cameras on, they're like, it takes too much bandwidth, Wendy. We don't want you to think we're not participatory, but some of them are, Bell County, Middlesboro, and, I'm really close to town in Mount Vernon, but our internet is so spotty sometimes. Because we have, internet television too. And I'm like, no one can watch TV when I'm on meetings. No one.
Well, I mean, I live right in the middle of Frankfurt, and I've a couple of times today got little blurbs that said, unstable internet or, whatever. So
yeah, it's funny. I put a rule. I'm like, no one can watch television. Nobody can be on devices. It's
mine's so bad in Lee County, Matthew, that I've got one of those big satellite dishes at like 12 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and whenever I have to connect, people know because it's like aiming to AT&T. No, it's true. Anyway, no, I don't have broadband here at all. I have I do have satellite internet on my roof, but it's not a dish 12 feet. It's more like that.
If you're around Dr. Evans very much, you'll get the Lee County jokes and the.
Oh, come on. Hey, Matthew, I'm all about having fun, but getting a job done and learning, and but you gotta enjoy it.
That's the best way to be.
That is the way to be.
We spend too many years and hours at work, especially in our field, to not have fun.
Amen.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Amen.
Yep.
All
So I'm
right.
always cracking these crazy jokes all the time about nothing, but anyway, so it's fun. It's good.
Yeah.
All right, looks like they're about to come back to us.
Okay.
Looks like they've got 30 seconds. Oh, some of them are starting to filter back.
Experience.
All right. It looks like we're all back. It doesn't look like I lost anybody again, so I'm going to count that as win number 2 for this morning. I'd like to do just like we did last time. Can I get 3 people to just share any takeaways that your groups may have made about the data?
We discussed how using data, like and analyzing data like this would be good to analyze like K-prep or any kind of state assessment scores to see where, like, how correlated different groups in our classrooms and schools are.
Yeah, and I would say local created assessments too. Any other takeaways?
We talked about being able to use those functions to disaggregate K-prep data, universal screeners, map, and just everything throughout the school year.
Great, thank you. So, okay, let's, I want to kind of just wrap up a little bit here. I know that we went through that back end of that just a little quick. So hopefully you'll be able to use those videos and other resources to be able to continue to expand your learning and to reflect back if you get stuck later. Can someone just confirm for me that you see the portal again? Okay, great. So I just want to hit a couple of other resources that you will have ongoing access to after this training. So of course you have access to the portal that will expire March 1st. So go in, download anything that you want to download, save a copy of it. You have until March 1st to do that. After March 1st, you'll have ongoing support and resources through my portal called the repository. And so this is where all of the tools that I build for teachers to use live forever. I will say the repository is behind a login wall. So it's free, and I'm not going to spam you with a bunch of emails, but you do have to log in because you'll see in a moment, some of these tools take up a lot of bandwidth and I have to pay for that. So I have to know like how many people are using that and logging in. So that's why it's behind a membership wall, but it's free and it will always be free forever. So I want to just show you some of these tools. The first thing are these first 6 data analysis tools. So now that I've taught you kind of a long way to do things, these are some shortcut tools to help you do some analysis really quick. The most popular one is my data disaggregation tool, which looks like this. When you launch it, there's directions here, and then there's more deeper technical directions and a sample file if you want to just experiment. But what you're going to do is simply upload your data into this tool. And let's see, this one. And it's going to immediately read and produce summaries of your data. So I'm going to select a demographic variable. So it's selected gender, and I'm going to select a score. So these are headings along the top of my data set. And you can see here that it's automatically, instantly, right away, giving me all of those functions that we just performed for this data. It's also giving me a box plot visualization. And you can see how fast it is. I can switch between scores and it updates immediately. I can switch by groups and it updates immediately. So this is a great tool for just that quick data disaggregation. The other one that people really like is this pre-test, post-test tool. You can really use this I call it pre-test, post-test, but anytime you have to just compare, right, two assessments, you can use this tool. It works the same way. So you upload your data, and this is my just random sample data. You'll select a column with your pre-test and the column with your post-test. It's going to summarize your pre-test. So again, here's all those little descriptive statistics that we already did. It gives you 2 graphs. It does that for your pre-test and your post-test. And then it gives you that t-test, so that t.test function that I skipped. It also gives you effect size, so that bottom table that you worked on, and it gives you a scatter plot. So it does all of this automatically. This is free to you. You just upload your data and it does it automatically. So I wanted to point those 2 tools out. Other tools, this one does a correlation matrix. So you built one of those, but it will build one. And this one's kind of cool because it's actually color coded. Special ed teachers are folks working on behavior interventions. If you're doing like ABA kind of work where you take a baseline, then you give an intervention, and then you take the intervention away, this will do ABA analysis automatically. So that's a great tool as well. Skill building videos. So there's some videos on all of these, videos on spreadsheets. I have 2 more video series coming out probably in March. I try to update every other month. I add something new to this, so it's a place you might want to visit a number of times. But you'll see new videos, some research and data support tools, and some little guidebooks. So this is available to you for free forever in the repository. I'm also getting ready to release a series of online courses that will dig into this, and they'll be self-paced. So we're not up against a ticking clock like we were today. So you can really like dig into each piece. So you might want to watch for those if this is something you want to learn more about. At the very bottom is a contact box. Feel free at any time to drop me an email. Let me know you're part of this training. If you have a question or a follow-up, you can contact me very easily through this. These are all my social media links. I'm very active on Twitter, and I tweet almost exclusively about education research and data. So if you're a big nerd, follow me on Twitter, and because I'm a big nerd and I want to connect with you. So with that, I'm going to say a sincere thank you for your patience and your attention today. I'm glad that you were able to join us on this kind of cold Saturday morning for this workshop. And I hope that you got something out of this and something that you'll be able to take with you. Before I turn it back to Wendy, I do have one more ask. Wendy's going to send you, of course, a program evaluation at the end. I am very interested in how you think this training can be better in a virtual format, because of course we're all doing that. I'm a continuous improvement guy, so any specific detail you can give me about how to make this better in a virtual format, I'm super here for that. So thank you, and Wendy, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, Matthew. As always, I knew this was going to be wonderful, and there's so much practical information that we can take back and use immediately. And that's what we love. And most of all, I know you're getting lots of shout outs and lots of love in the chat, but I really do appreciate the practicality of your repository and the fact that they can go back. And I didn't even realize the ABA. I know we've got special education teachers on here, and I know that alone is going to be something that they will be able to utilize and use very, very impactful. So I love it. I love it. We appreciate you very much. I will send you, Matthew, I will send you the results from our evaluation data. The special ed piece is, and it makes a beautiful graph. As a former special ed director, I'm loving it. I'm like, woohoo. Love it, love it. You do not have to stay on, Matthew, and listen to my my blurb of chat about invoicing unless you just want to, because we are going to talk about that for just a moment. I know some of you all are dying to know about money and invoicing and all those great, wonderful things. But before I forget, I am going to drop the session evaluation in the link. Make sure you all, I get in trouble every time we have a session because you all do not complete those. Gabby fusses at me. Dr. Evans knows. Gabby says, Wendy, they did not fill this out. So make sure that's how we can pay you all. I know you all want to get paid, especially for showing up on a blistery cold Saturday morning. Fill this out. And also because we do share this information with our presenters, it's helpful for them. So please let us know. And I know, like Matthew said, to echo him, it is helpful if we're virtual or if we're in person, to give us, and that helps us grow our grant too. We know the pieces that you all like, the pieces that we can improve. So thank you for filling that out for us. Moving on to the invoicing piece, here's what I want to share with each of you. And I'm going to record this just because we do have some people that are not with us today. So allow me to share my screen now. That's going to be obstinate and fussy with me. So everyone should have received an email about what the invoices look like this year. If you've been with charge or you've been in charge for many years, the invoices have changed up just a little bit because one, and I apologize, first of all, let me tell you this, I apologize that we're just now getting invoices out to you. But there's a reason for that. And I was telling Dr. Evans this morning, part of that is because we're still adding programming to the calendar. I have a meeting on Friday. I take your feedback very seriously. So every bit of the feedback you all give me, I hunt and I dig and I try to find the top-notch presenters that you all want, that you all need to make your, to make student learning relevant, to make your classrooms better. Someone just put on a feedback form, Wendy, I'd really like to have more information about social studies standards. I have a meeting this Friday with Heather Ransom and Lauren Gaglio with KDE about specific standards and digging into those standards, what those look like in your classroom. So I will add that to your invoice as well. But here is what our invoice is going to look like. So I'm going to just show you, and I'm not going to, you all are wonderfully intelligent people. I'm not going to read this to you, but I just do want to point out a few things. At this point, everyone should have completed, and I don't know why I just did that. Can you all see my screen? And what can you see? Can you all see the invoice?
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Yes.
At this point, everyone should have completed. This is not the right invoice. Oh man. All right. So I'm gonna go to an email where I sent that to you last night. Let's see. I'm going to stop sharing and go to the right email. So Gabby and I, it was funny. She's going to whip me so I have two folders. I have a charge folder that I work out of, and I have a charge folder that I share stuff with she and Dr. Evans. And so apparently my working folder did not get sent to Gabby. And so she was ready to whip me because she had the old forms. So here are your new, and if you all have those, you can look at them. But while I'm finding them to share, on your invoices, invoice 1, everyone has to complete orientation. You got to choose your orientation, whether you came to the one, and my phone is Sarah. Okay. I will send that to Lori. I will send Sarah the email. So on your phone, as far as orientations, you got to choose which orientation. That is a requirement. That's something that we put into the grant, that everyone would attend orientation. So anything you see in red, let me share this because I don't know if you all can see that. Anything that's shared in red is a required event. Okay, so anything in red, just know, hey, that's a requirement. Now, if you came in person, and I'm having to think back, and you all remind me, I think those were all virtual this year because of COVID. But if you watched a recording, so that was at the beginning of the year, and I know that was during my kidney stone hiatus, and so Dr. Evans recorded one for me. And so we've got the recording. Anyone that did not go through orientation, you can watch the recording for $20. So the way this will work, always think through this. If you have to watch a recording of any event, anything that you do is $20 per hour on most, and I'll kind of talk about that. As far as professional learning, $20 per hour is what we pay you, unless it's a recorded event, and you get $10. And so what I need you to do, and this is kind of for if you're new to charge, if you're old to charge, I personally, and this is the way all of my former, or if you've been with me for 3 years, I recommend that you print out a hard copy and you just circle this. The V is virtual, the I is in person, and the R is for recorded. And that just kind of gives you a, I was there virtually. Yes, I sat through it live virtually. I was in person, or I watched the recorded video. If you do not fill out a session evaluation, we cannot pay you. Like, so at the end of the year, when Gabby comes to me and she says, well, Novel Bond says he did this, but we don't have a session evaluation. That's why I'm always at the end of every session saying, please fill this out. So make sure on those session evaluations that you don't skip out early. If you do have to skip out early, make sure you say, Wendy, I need the session evaluation. That's how simple it is. So go through, mark these, mark your payment. So like, for example, if you are in person or you're virtually live, you get the full amount. If you're watching it recorded, you get, the $10 hour amount. I'm going to scroll down. These are just all the sessions. So you can see, based on the invoicing, we have a lot of opportunities for professional learning. Okay. One thing I want to note, everybody look at the top of this. You can only make $1,500 on this first invoice, max. If you do every event on this, if you do everything, and Dr. Evans and I were talking about this, there is more than $1,500 to be made on this invoice. So just note that. I've made your calendar to where everybody and their brother should have $1,500 at the end of this year. Every person in charge should be able to make $1,500 because I've got more than $1,500 available. That being said, plan your events accordingly. Like, know that there are required activities that you have to do. That also being said, everybody scroll down to the end. You have to do, these are non-negotiables. I do not expect everybody to be at every day of NCHE. I know things happen. Some of you have already reached out to me. If you are expecting a baby during NCHE week, of course I'm going to give you grace for that. I don't expect poor Brittany or poor Kaylee Simpson. I'm going to give her a shout out on this recording because she was at a charge event the day before she had a baby. That is awesome, but that is not, you all are devoted, you all are amazing, but I don't expect you to be at a charge event the day before you deliver a baby. Kudos if you are, because that's awesome. But I know life happens, but the main thing that we want you to know is that these summer NCHE events, I know most, some of you may have vacations scheduled. Let me know that in advance. Would all 120 of you have vacation scheduled this week? I hope not, because, we're paying lots of great money to have this NCHE conference and have presenters come in from out of state that are amazing. I know you may not be there for every day, but try to go ahead and put June 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th on your calendar. I realize I've got 2 kids. I know how life happens. You may not be able to get a babysitter for the whole entire week, but try to plan to at least attend some of that conference. Put it on your calendar. The next thing that is required, and these other things are all optional. We don't, that's the beauty of charge. We don't say you have to do anything. We would like for you to attend charge NCHE week. And the beauty of that, let me tell you the flip side of that. If you attend NCHE week, you also get NCHE membership. So you will have that for an entire year. So, and that's something that you can put on like your profile. You're an NCHE member. So that's another little great beauty of that too. These are required activities. This has changed if you were a charge member in the past. Everybody has to do a teacher pre-test and survey. Everyone has to get their students to do a pre-test and survey. And everyone has to do post-test survey for students and teachers. The one thing that we've added, because this is a requirement of the grant that we were not really fulfilling, to the need that we needed to do as well in the past. Every one of you, and this is easy, so I don't want anyone to stress out about it. Every one of you do student engagement every day in social studies in some way, some shape, some fashion. So I want you to be intentional now because you know it's a requirement of the grant. Think about ways that you engage your students in civics, in history, something. Like, how are you engaging your students? It may be as simple as doing a DBQ and they're up. I know Shayla Carroll's really good about doing learning walks, gallery walks in the hallway. Take a picture of that. You're going to upload that in your Google folder. Gabby will be sharing Google folders with every one of you. It's super simple. Anything you would tweet out like, oh, my students went out onto the playground, they picked up trash. I talked about civic responsibility. That's student engagement activity, and you've documented it. It's that simple. Every one of our teacher leaders will do a student engagement activity. Super simple. It's documented. You've uploaded it, and you're done.
Wendy,
So-
real quick question.
Absolutely.
Is it just one time
One
activity?
time.
All right.
You can do more. I mean, because obviously throughout the school year, you're going to have multiple, but I need at least every person in the grant to say, yes, I've done something with student engagement. Super
right.
simple. And it's, I mean, like I said, I think before we were trying to make this big mountain of a molehill. If your students go to KYA, if they go to CUNA, I mean, anything like that, that's student engagement where you're getting them up out of their seats and you're having them to think about ways they can engage with social studies, with civics, that's student engagement. And that's as simple as it is. So let's not overthink what that really is. And you all do that every day. Let's just be intentional about documenting.
And we would love to have you do more of that. Just one time is great, but if you want to
Right.
showcase as much as you can, showcase what you're doing. I mean, that's what this is
Absolutely.
about. Showcase your outstanding work. And when you've got 2 comments in the chat there, so
Okay.
just
Yeah, Dr. Evans, if you'll read those to me while I'm doing my
yeah,
screen
okay, I got it. Okay, from Kristen, is there any way to know if we completed the session evaluations?
What I will do is, I'm glad you said that, Kristen. So in the past, you know, on our website, let me show you, and our website's changing, but in the past, we've always had your hours to where you can get online and you can check that, where you can check what KDC has on your hours and you can check what your hours are compared to KDC's hours. We've not done that yet because we've not had invoices ready, you know, kind of up in line. Gabby will have that up and going, and I will show you all that or what that will look like. So let me show you. I will send out all of this in an email. So I just wanted to kind of walk you through it because I know I've got several new people on here. So in the past, let me show you this. All right, can you all see just our website?
Yes.
Okay, so in the past, what you would do is you would go to like teacher resources on our website, and then you would go to performance sheet. So it's really easy. You go to our website, you go to resources, you click on performance sheet. And I'm just showing last year's. This is exactly what it will look like this year. So this year you will click, you will look at like, oh, for invoice 1, I can go through and I can check and see exactly where I'm at. I can look and see how many hours I've got, how much money I'm up to. We will do that exact same thing this year. You can also click on, like Miranda, I'm gonna pick on you. I can click on my Google Drive. I'll be able to see everything I put in my Google Drive. So we will do all of that the same this year. You'll be able to click on and see how much you've got for invoice 2. Everything will be the same. But I first wanted to educate you on what's on the invoice, what that's gonna look like. I will roll all of this out in an email to you, but I didn't want to do the email. Michael, Gabby just likes to pick on you, Michael. Yeah, Gabby just likes to pick on you. Sabrina, what I have been doing is if the session is recorded, we have some sessions that have not been recorded. 1, because I have not recorded them, and 2, because some presenters do not want to be recorded. So if the session is recorded, like Nuzella, I've been pretty good about, hey, here's the session recorded link. All of that will be housed on the website as well. And I'll go through and I'll put all the links for, anything that has been recorded up until this point. If we see something that's missing on the information sheet, yes, if there's something that is missing, like if you go through and you say, oh, I was at that session, then all we'll do is we'll say, hey, fill out this evaluation sheet. Let me tell you, please do not wait until invoices are due in June and then say, I've got 15 evaluations that I need to fill out. Yes. Yes, Brittany, like on 12/2, if we turn in the extra text set, yes, you will get paid $40 instead of $20. Absolutely. Yeah. And so there are some additional, let me show you invoice 2 really quickly, because that has changed as well. And my screen share is not on. Okay. Because I just want to show you that, because this one is the one that has changed quite a bit. And it's a good change quite a bit. I think you all will enjoy this. Maybe if I can find it. Okay. So there were some things on invoice 2 that, I felt like many people didn't even turn in an invoice 2 because they were like, I'm not going on the trip. I don't really need to turn in invoice 2. So most of you know that Twitter has been my thing. I'm like, hey, one, it gets our evaluator to notice us, but you also can get paid to tweet. So those of you that want a Twitter workshop, I'll let you start it now, because you're just now hearing about this on the invoice. So you can get paid to tweet. You'll get paid $50 if you tweet 8 eligible tweets, so at least 1 tweet a month, which, my goodness, we have how many charge sessions? You should be able to get 1 tweet a month, and then 2 bonus charge tweets. Make sure they are tweets that really promote the work that Charge does. Like, hey, this is a great session. Look at what Charge is bringing to my school. It does not have to be directly related to a Charge session. It could be just like what Melissa did when she took the Jamboard that she learned about in Charge and she actually did it in her class. She was at home with COVID and she tag teamed with, I mean, that was amazing. Okay. Next thing, I'm moving on from Twitter because I don't want to take your all's whole lunch. Teacher and admin reflections. In the past, no one has wanted to do them because they've taken for stinking ever. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I know you all did not want to do them. So guess what? We got a new evaluator. And before, you had to do them on paper. You had to scan them. You had to turn them in. It was a nightmare of a process. Now, look at the money that you get. If you do 25 of them, you get $150. If you do 40 of them, you get $200. If you do 55, you get $300. What if I told you it's all on Google now? You don't have to scan anything. You don't have to keep it. Hey, y'all interested in doing some teacher reflections? It's all on Google. So here's the way this is going to work. Originally, when I ask you for a teacher mentor, you can do this either way. If you are a teacher and you want to do this, a self-reflection in your classroom, have at it. You can only submit 1 per day on yourself. If you want to do 1 on yourself per day and 1 on your mentor teacher per day, I'll count that. But you can go into your mentor teacher's classroom and you can watch them. It is a true reflection form. It's all in Google and it'll say, what am I seeing? And you are reflecting on what you're seeing. It is a true reflection form. Admin, like Sabrina, Novel, you all are on here. It is a checklist for you all. And you don't have to do just 1 per day. If you're doing walkthroughs anyway, you can go in and you can say, I'm seeing, man, they're using DBQs. Yeah, they're using Kagan. Oh, I like what I'm seeing. And you check it. And you all can get paid
what I
for
was
doing.
wondering how many we could do per day.
You can do as many per day as, because I realize, and Dr. Evans and I, we were talking about, as an admin, you're going to go into multiple classrooms in a day. So for the admin piece, if you're a curriculum coach and you're walking into multiple classrooms, you all can submit and you can choose. Now, here's the part of that. If you're a curriculum coach, you're in that admin role. So you can choose, I really like the teacher reflection form, or I really like the admin form. Okay. So you've got a little grace there. I'm going to send both of those out in an email just as soon as we get off of here. So you'll get the links on those. Next, and I'm moving on really quickly because you all got to go have lunch. Teacher leadership activities. You get peer coaching automatically. If you turn in a form, and it's pretty easy, if you turn in a peer coaching or mentoring form and you say, my name's Wendy King and I'm going into Lynn Lockard's room and I'm doing coaching reflection, you just tell me on January 15th, I went in and watched Lynn, and I've turned in this reflection form. I'm going to give you $50. I note that the hours vary, but you're going to get $50 for doing that mentoring with her. Because guess what? If you're going in and watching her do a reflection form, that's that coaching piece. That's that mentoring piece. And we're going to pay you $50 on top of the reflections. Does everybody see how that works? If I do 55 reflections on Lynn, I'm going to earn up to $350. That's the beauty in this. If I do Newsella Certified Teacher Program, I get an extra $100. I'm going to roll out a March book study and you all get to vote. That's an extra $100. I am so excited about this historical hometown historical markers. Our Kentucky Historical Society is launching this only with KY charge teachers. You know, those historical markers that we have all throughout our state? There are numerous ones that no one has researched. Guess who gets to do the research on those? You or your students, and they're launching this only with KY charge teachers. So for example, in Knox County, if there's 4 historical markers that no one has done the research on, they're going to teach you all on January 26th, I think is this session. They're going to teach us how to do the research. You all conduct the research, and then on a historical marker, it's going to say your name, KY charge, and you all will have this living legacy of doing the research on a historical marker that will be up forever. Plus, I'm paying you to do it. How awesome is that? So I'm really jazzed about that one. And then also we pay you $360 to either go to Washington with us this summer or go to Colonial Williamsburg. So to be a charge member, you will earn up to $1,500 on invoice 1 and $1,060 on invoice 2. And it's really simple to do it. It's fun. And I hope you all have as much fun as I do, but that's our invoices. Anybody got any questions? I know that was super fast and I took way longer than I wanted to, but I really wanted to explain our invoices and how they work. And if you don't have any questions, go have lunch and I'll see you back at 1 o'clock. If you do have questions, I'm staying on here.
You got a couple questions in the chat.
All
there
right.
about-
You
we're
do
working
not
on
pay
the-
for the trip to Washington. That's the beauty of this. All of our trips, we pay you to go and we pay for everything. There may be a couple of meals. And Dr. Evans and we're still working this out with NCHE. I think what's going to happen this year, if you've been on a trip with us in the past, we have always, we've paid X amount of meals. You may pay for the dinner, the breakfast up there, or the lunch on the way back. But I think this year what's going to happen is we're going to give you a meal card. You'll have like a little debit card or a little spending card. And then you can kind of decide, you know, how and when you spend your money for meals. So we pay for everything on these trips, except for, you know, souvenirs, which.
And we're finalizing dates on those with NCHE. So
I will tell you, so go ahead and kind of pencil in these dates. So for those of you that are interested, the trip to Colonial Williamsburg. So just if you're interested in that trip, the rough dates will be July 10th through the 14th. The rough dates for our trip to Washington, D.C. would be June 20th through the 24th. So those are kind of rough dates. And the way that will work, so if you're new to charge, we do a sign-up sheet. And it's kind of course, COVID has kind of wrecked everything, but we can only get X amount of people on a bus. In the past, it's always been 50 because we take a, what kind of bus is it called? Charter bus. We take a charter bus. And so, yes, Angela, that's exactly right. And so we take a charter bus. COVID has kind of changed everything. So, you know, it's less than the amount of people that we can put on a bus and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So once we finalize numbers of how many people we can get to go on the trip, then we do like a sign-up sheet. And so it will be kind of based on participation. And we hate to kind of do it that way, but we feel like that it's really unfair of us to say, oh, this person's came to one event, but let's let them go on a charge trip that we're paying for. Notice this optional PD. Yes, so the some of the optional PD I'm trying to find some like, so the optional PD from last year, like if it was one of the KDE modules, if you want to like re-go through those, you did it last year and you feel like it's going to be beneficial to you, absolutely. I'm trying to find some other optional PD. So you'll see on there that it says like online podcast or like online trainings. I've opened that up to our professors. You'll have our first professor today, Dr. Nathan Coleman. I've heard him present for the McConnell Center. If they do not do online like YouTube or podcast for us, then I will open that up to other additional PDs that you can earn hours for. The Charge Mentor Program, it's on there, Lynn. That will be your reflection, like when I talked about the reflection piece. And then you get the $50 if you reflect with your mentor, or if you choose just to do it personally. So it's a pretty simple, no fail program, really. So you don't have to do all of your, does that person have to be in charge? Yes. Yes, Samantha. Dr. Evans, we may talk through that.
What's that?
Their mentor have to be in charge.
Yeah, what we need to do there, we need to put a very simplified process in place of what the expectation is and get that to you. So we don't want you just to walk in a classroom and check a box and say, well, we've reflected. That's not what this is about.
Right.
There is an expectation of true coaching together in a collegial coaching piece. It's not really a mentor-mentee relationship.
And I will send you, Lynn, if you let me know someone that you're comfortable with, that is in charge. And then Samantha, let me talk to Dr. Evans about that. Like if there's someone in your building that you could grow their practices, I may be open to that. Yeah, Renee, I agree. I think that this is one way to really build that, build strong instructional practices along, throughout the building. I know we've got some building principals on here that would love to see what you all are doing in all of their teachers. So we're all about the sustainability piece of this and paying you all to be. Yeah, Danielle, I know you all go back and share everything. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you all got a really good, strong program back there at West Urban. So I'm excited. I hope you all are as excited. Our calendar this year, Dr. Evans is kind of telling me, he's like, okay, all right. Like I have filled it to the brim. I hope you all are as excited as I am about all the great. Listen, another thing that I can't shout out enough about, if you've ever tried to register for a SHEG program, or you've ever tried to pay for that on your own, it's outrageous. And we've got SHEG coming 3 times. So I hope you all register for these SHEG events. I am so stinking jazzed about SHEG. Like, so excited. So that might be one that I'm really, really pumped about as well. So yay. Listen, it's 12:19. You all go enjoy a little bit of lunch. If you all do not have, if you all don't have any other questions, feel free to, I will stay on here and answer questions as long as you all want. But if you don't have any other questions, you all feel free to go and grab you a bite of lunch, or like I said, we can stay on here and chat. I'll talk all things charge all day long. But you'll use the same link to come back on this afternoon.
What time do you want us back?
We'll start, prompt at 1 o'clock. So
Right.
if you want to come back on a few minutes before, that's great. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Renee. I love it.